cross out the wrong entry, make the correction, then date it and sign it. Of course, those rules apply to handwritten records, but the same principles apply when using computers. It's claimed that 80% of product recalls are due to faulty labeling. By the GMP definition of quality of fitness for purpose, it doesn't take much imagination to realize what can happen if a very sick patient is given medication from a wrongly labeled container. Everyone who works in the warehouse or in shipping should always keep a sharp lookout for wrongly labeled products and report them immediately. So, let's look at those aspects of labeling that affect the storage and handling of GMP products, starting with internal labels. There are two types: identity labels and status labels. Identity labels do just that and are placed on containers, equipment, bulk packages, materials containers, and etc. to identify the product being made or the materials they contain. Apart from the product name or material type, they will also show the batch number, date, and material code number. Status labels differ in that they show the current status of the product, equipment, containers, and so on, so that they may read, to be cleaned, or cleaned, approved, on test, rejected, hold, or quarantine. Incidentally, both identity and status labels can be combined in one to give all necessary information. We're going to repeat ourselves again, because every GMP rule is there to ensure that the right things are done at the right time, using the right materials and equipment, and above all, to avoid mistakes. Labeling is certainly no exception, the first rule of which is that every type of label must be handled as a fundamental component of the product and looked after just as securely. If you see labels wrongly placed or partly adrift from a container, then, if you are authorized to do so, they should be corrected or reported to someone who is. The information on all labels must be clear and readable. And here's a really important rule. Never place identity or status labels on the lid of a container, because they can be removed and then placed on the wrong container. Never stick a new label over an existing one. Always remove the old label first, otherwise the new one could come off and you've got it, trouble. These GMP rules have a specific purpose. They're designed to stop the tragedies that could and have happened when, say, the status label cleaned is put on a container that has not been cleaned. It goes unnoticed and so contaminates the next batch of a different product, and yes, you've got that one as well, more trouble. There are three separate stages to the GMP of logistics, which is about the handling of materials and finished products. Stage 1 is their receipt from somewhere else, and, dependent on where you are, called either incoming goods or goods inwards. Stage 2 is looking after them for a period of time, called either goods on hold or goods in stock. And finally, Stage 3, shipping them out when required as shipping, goods out, or outgoing goods. Each requires specific attention, so we'll start with goods in and examine the three material forms that it describes. At a manufacturing plant, most goods in will come from an external source, whether from another manufacturer or even a sister plant, and will be in the form of starting or packaging materials or as finished goods. The warehouse at a manufacturing plant will also receive goods in from the production area, either as bulk product, waiting further processes, or finished goods for holding as inventory and shipment. Distributors and shipping contractors will nearly always only receive finished goods, but from a variety of manufacturers. In addition, no matter what type of warehouse, goods in will include returned or recalled products. Receipt of goods from external sources are always the subject of an SOP which will stipulate that goods must be checked immediately and that the documentation, the delivery note or packing list received with the goods, and a copy of the buying department's purchase order contain matching information so that physical checks confirm that they are the correct goods as ordered, in the correct quantity, of the right grade, correctly labelled, in clean condition, undamaged and dry. Any discrepancies should be reported immediately. This can only be a first visual check because the staff on a receiving dock can't be expected to carry out more detailed technical inspection. That will come later and be done usually by QC laboratory staff. After checking the consignment, receipt must be recorded, usually starting with the purchase order number, the product's internal reference number, the vendor's name, product code number and batch number. Of course, we record the total quantity received, the number of containers it came in, and the date. Finally, as always, a verifying signature to confirm that the appropriate checks have, in fact, been carried out. If the materials received must be placed in quarantine, then this will be stipulated in the SOP, the correct status label applied, and the materials transported physically to the appropriate quarantine area. They may only have come from the manufacturing department or the packaging hall, but they are goods in just the same and must be recorded in exactly the same way, by checking the product details, batch numbers, quantities, and identifying their status. And it goes without saying that they must be handled with the greatest possible care. Products that are received back in the warehouse from external sources will be normally either returned or recalled goods, and both have to be handled with great care. Returned goods are nearly always those that have been on the shelves of wholesale distributors or retailers and sent back for a variety of reasons, such as overstocking or, say, superficial damage. They may be eligible for resale if, for example, they're in their original containers and packaging and are known to have been handled correctly. Of course, they must also be within their shelf life date and been examined by an authorized person. Recalled products are another matter, and the subject of recall notices initiated by the company when, after release, they are found to have been wrongly made or wrongly labelled. As you will appreciate, this is an extremely serious problem, and will be the subject of an SOP that details every step that was taken in the plant, in the warehouse, and by distributors and retailers. Recording all the appropriate data is even more important with recalled goods because the packaging is nearly always in perfect condition and it's so easy to put them back with perfect stock, with easily imagined consequences. Goods in hold comprise either the raw materials, often called starting materials, which form the constituent parts of the end products we manufacture, plus their packaging, such as containers and labels. Or they are the finished goods themselves. Whichever form they take, they must be stored neatly and tidily, and be easy to get at. They must be labelled to show their identity and status, and any shelf life or retest dates that apply to them. Warehouses that hold GMP inventory are designed and built to protect the products from the things that affect them, such as forklift trucks that need plenty of space to give their drivers room to maneuver without causing damage. Damage is caused by dampness, therefore ensuring that water is kept out is essential. Some products are affected by light, which is why they are packaged in coloured containers, while many are temperature sensitive, which is why cold stores are installed, usually required to keep the product at between 2 to 8 degrees Celsius, that's 36 to 46 degrees Fahrenheit. Most product, though, is kept normally at temperatures of between 15 to 25 degrees Celsius or 59 to 86 degrees Fahrenheit. If you work in a warehouse and have done all the things you're supposed to do with the materials and goods you handle, then there's not a lot more you can do. However, Even if it's not your direct responsibility, you can keep your eyes open and act when you see damaged or spoiled goods, damage to the building or racking system, security breaches, in particular strangers in the warehouse, obvious changes to temperature outside the normal limits, and labeling faults, and anyone not using FIFO, e.g. who is picking the latest in rather than the earliest stocks. Goods out or shipping applies equally to materials being issued to manufacturing and packaging departments and the shipping of finished goods for distribution. As usual, we'll examine each of these separately and stress again that the issue of raw or starting material to production must be undertaken as a precision exercise. Instructions will detail exactly what must be issued, and records must be made that this has been done precisely. The materials that comprise GMP-regulated products nearly always contain powders and/or liquids that must be dispensed in precise volume. In addition, they may well be potent or, like the antibiotics and anti-cancer drugs, very toxic and poisonous, and dispensed in controlled and filtered environments. At the risk of endless repetition, the issue and dispensing of raw materials must only be done by strict reference to the SOP and by people who are qualified to do so. If you are authorized to dispense and handle materials, you should always wear the specified protective clothing, which may include masks and eye protection as well as gloves. This is not only to protect you from possible ill effects, but, just as important, protect the product from any contamination you may disperse. In addition, you must check that the air handling system is switched on and working correctly, that the whole area and its equipment is properly cleaned, that all scales or balances are correctly calibrated. When it comes to the actual dispensing, the first thing is to check that you are using the correct material, that the batch number is correct, and that it's not past its shelf life date. Obviously, you'll check that the bulk container from which you are taking the material is not damaged, and equally that the container into which you are dispensing is in a clean and fit state. The actual weighing and dispensing should be done with the minimum of movement to limit dust, and when done, close and label the container as detailed in the SOP. If material remains in the bulk container when the batch has been completed, it should be carefully sealed and returned to inventory. It's no surprise that when the task is finished, the record must be filled in to show what it is, the batch number, and quantity dispensed, all completed with the signature or initials of the person who did the job, together with those of the person who checked it. The final stage in the whole GMP production process is to ship product to the distributor or user. We mentioned earlier that this may be to a distribution warehouse, to a retailer, or to a hospital. This requires picking the correct items from their shelves and assembling them against the order documentation. We can only say, again, that it's necessary to pick the exact items that are specified, check that they are not time expired, ensure that the customer's name and address are correct, and that all the details of the consignment are correct. And if you're the one who has to transport these products, remember that it's essential that the identity of each of them is accessible, that they are not spoiled, don't get contaminated or allowed to contaminate another product, and that they are protected against breakage or, if appropriate, against spillage. And finally, yes, finally, if you are driving a temperature-controlled truck or van, please make certain that it remains at the right temperature, so don't turn off the power to the chiller unit. And that's how the GMP of logistics fits in with the complete production chain of making life-saving healthcare products. Let's review it before you do the test paper. The manufacture and handling of medicinal and similar products is regulated by government agencies. This is achieved through following the rules of current good manufacturing practice, CGMP for short. There are 10 basic rules, with the most important that every action will only be undertaken by following written instructions. The GMP definition of product quality is that it will be fit for its purpose. Logistics for the purpose of GMP covers material handling, storage and distribution. It applies to manufacturer, specialist packaging companies and distributors. Stores and warehouses should be secure and resistant to adverse weather conditions and animal life. Internal environmental conditions can include heating, air conditioning, lighting and humidity. They must be able to handle raw materials, bulk and finished goods, rejects, returned and recalled goods. Inventory must be stored and used in FIFO, first in, first out order. Quarantine areas for the storage of materials waiting release must be separate and secure. Stores and warehouses may also need to store inventory in cold room and also materials that are dangerous, toxic and controlled. People working in GMP environments, including the field of logistics, have particularly good working characteristics and note and report discrepancies that may not be in their direct control. Documentation, usually in the form of standard operational procedures, SOPs, tell us what to do, and records what has been done. Historical data, often stored for a minimum of 5 years, provides information to check on past problems and to enable remedies to be devised. All documentation must be completed legibly, with check signatures to verify each activity. 4 out of 5 product recalls are due to faulty labeling, so always check the correctness of every label. Internal labels are either identity labels to show the details of what something is, or status labels to show the stage the material is at. All types of warehouse have 3 stages of activity, starting with goods in, goods on hold, and finally, goods out. Whatever your job, be neat and tidy in all you do. Follow the instructions exactly and record everything precisely.